One of the things I really love about Zentangle is that I can just sit down with no plan, no prearranged idea of what I'm going to draw, and I can just start drawing. By using simple shapes, patterns, and basic techniques, I can create something, even if I'm not sure what that's going to be when I start. And that sometimes is part of the fun because you don't really know what's going to end up in your composition or whether it'll be a technical composition at all. It might just be some lines and circles and shading, and it looks interesting. Let's jump in. Of course, Zentangle is not the only art form that allows you to sit down without a plan, without an idea, and generate something interesting. You can do this as an artist in any practice of art. But Zentangle is unique in the sense that it is designed that way from the ground up. Though there are people who do really elaborate compositions with Zentangle, and I sometimes do those myself, one of the great things about it is you simply fill space with predetermined patterns. Now, if you don't even know what the predetermined pattern is going to be, of course, that's a little interesting step in and of itself. But Zentangle art is produced not by composing a fantastic composition, but by simply drawing patterns one line at a time until something shows up on that paper. And so in my case here, I began drawing something that I was familiar with. Of course, I didn't just make this up. This is a pattern called Arukas, and it's drawn by alternating these lines with the circle in this case. And I just did it until I felt that the form or the shape had fleshed itself out far enough, and then I began to add other details. And I wanted to add something that was different than the hard-edged lines that I had been drawing, so I added these little fescue shapes, wiggly, swirly lines that were a little bit different than anything else on the page so far, and I could use them to enhance some of those open areas and add something there so it didn't just look like dead space. But of course, as I was doing that, the science fiction lover in my brain said, hey, why not add some larger fescue, that's what those little shapes are called, and turn them into tentacles. Tentacles that sort of come out of that centerpiece and wrap their way around other parts of the drawing. I thought that this would not only add some visual interest, but it might give a little life or movement to the drawing as well, as it sort of weaves its way up and around and under and over different parts of the drawing. It would just create some interesting visual patterns, or at least I had hoped that it would. But I didn't want them to overtake the whole thing and become the only purpose or point of that drawing, so I made them bold and dark to add some contrast, but nevertheless I kept them relatively small in their diameter so that they wouldn't fill the whole drawing. And I just added several of those, sort of weaving their way throughout. And that was giving me the desired effect as this composition sort of came to life right before my eyes. Now, once I had all that done, I began to add some graphite for shading. And I just followed a similar standard type pattern by adding some shading or shadow to the areas that might be recessed or lower than the other areas, or where lines crossed over one another and might cast a shadow, just to add some sense of depth and dimension to the drawing. It's always quite enjoyable with any type of drawing, whether it be Zentangle or otherwise, to see some of the forms and shapes that you've been putting down take on new life as you add shadows and blending and highlights and other sorts of texturing details to it. So here, just by adding the edge shadows there that I did, it created a rounded shape and added more dimension and volume to those pieces on the drawing. And here I just add some little subtle highlights with a white gel pen, and it just helps those little tentacle lines that I created stand out a little bit more. Little white charcoal pencil. Then I took a look at the drawing from a little distance there, and decided I needed to enhance the background or separate the foreground from the background a little bit more by adding a little drop shadow around those edges. I just felt that that helped to separate the drawing. And then I touched up those lines a little bit, and we ended up with the finished drawing. And I had no idea what I was going to draw when I sat down, but it was fun to see this come together. I hope that you enjoyed watching as well. Thanks again for tuning in. I look forward to seeing everyone again real soon back here in the Tangles and Tunes channel. Take care now. Bye-bye.